and they expounded unto him the way of God more perfectly. Is that not a wonderful way to say it? They led him to the Lord. I think about this phrase. Now, I got to tell you this. I don't like honey. It doesn't do anything for me. Don't come up and tell me how good it is. I'm sure it's great. It's wonderful stuff. I'll take a bath in it, all right? But I just don't like the taste. I told you, I like something with like sugar. Bleached, sun-drenched, all food value taken out of it. I want, it's poison. That's my thing right there. That's what I want. And I know people say, well, we don't use honey. We don't use sugar. We put honey in everything. Well, I'm glad if you do. I'm happy if you do. I use sugar. I like sugar. I don't like honey. I don't like the taste of honey. But you know what God said? He told Israel, I'm going to give you a land. And he said, what's it like? And he said, it is a land flowing with milk and honey. I don't even like honey, and I want to go there. Only a God like this could say something and mention something that I'm not even... Now, if he said flowing with milk and peas, I'm not sure. But he said flowing with milk and honey, and even though I don't like honey, I think, is that not a description? A land flowing with milk and honey. You know what he said one time? He said it's like apples of gold and pictures of silver. Do you understand how creative your God is? Do you understand? That is artistic. That is poetic. That comes from the throne of God. This is not, I know he did chisel 10 commandments into stone, but that's not what he has to do every time. And I appreciate the artisticness of our God. This has to come along with it. He is vengeful. Well, I don't think God ought to be vengeful. Oh, yeah, it's easy for you to say. I bet you are. Say, how is he vengeful? You know what his people said one time? His people, before they murdered his son, they said, his blood be upon us and upon our children. And God said, you got it. And all through history, those Jews have been a hunted people. And it wasn't just World War II. The Inquisition rounded up Christians, and the Inquisition rounded up Jews. I told you the other day, you get somebody on the left and they hate the Jews. You get somebody on the right and they hate the Jews. The Jews are hunted. They are hated. They are despised. People badmouth them all the time. You say, what happened? They said his blood be upon us and upon our children. I have 3 sons. I don't mean this in a bad way, guys. I like y'all. I love you. I wouldn't let one of my sons die for you. I love my son far more than any of you or all of you. I would not let one of my sons die for you. But if I did, wouldn't I still have 2 left over? Right? God only had 1. And he let him die for you and me. Now let me say this. I have 3 sons. If I did let one die for you, I mean, if I watched him as they beat his back with the whip, as they drove the thorns into his brow, as they made him carry the cross and spit on him and ripped the beard out of his face and drove the nails into his hand, if I let one of my sons go through that for you and you didn't take what he went through as your payment for sin, I'd put you in hell myself. So he said, vengeance belongeth to me. And he is a vengeful God. I'm just glad he didn't spend all of his time there. God is flexible. I'm glad he's flexible. If you want to see how flexible God is, take a look at Numbers chapter 14. Here he is. He is angry. I mean, you ever hear anybody say, I'm mad enough to kill? Boy, you don't want God to say that because he starts killing. And look what he says about Israel. Numbers chapter 14 and verse 12. He's talking to Moses. He said, I will smite them with the pestilence and disinherit them. He said, I'm going to kill them all. He said to Moses, I've had it. I'm going to kill them all. And then he says this, and I will make of thee a greater nation and mightier than they. I'm sorry, every time I hear that, I can hear God saying, I'm going to kill them all. And Moses going, no, and I'll make a greater nation out of you. No kidding. No kidding. Really, the nation of Moses. Can I ask you a question? How come you pick up a paper and you don't read about the nation of Moses? Right there it is. He said, I'm going to eliminate the nation of Israel and I'm going to make you. Isn't that Moses he's talking to? I'm going to make you a greater nation. How come that little patch of soil over there at the far eastern end of the Mediterranean is not called Moses today? Why is it still called Israel? Why do we still have a nation of Israel when right there is the death sentence and we should be talking about the nation of Moses? I'll tell you why. It's Moses' fault. And it's God's flexibility. Look at verse 19. Here's what Moses said. Pardon, I beseech thee, the iniquity of this people according unto the greatness of thy mercy, and as thou hast forgiven this people from Egypt even until now. And look at verse 20. And the Lord said, I have pardoned according to thy word. You have any idea how many times God in this Bible tells somebody to do something and they go do it and they come back to him and he said, I've done according to your word? He tells some human, go do this, go say this, go do this, go over here, go do this, and they get it done, and they come back and they go, I have done according to your word. Right there, you have God saying to a man, I've done according to your word. That's pretty impressive stuff. That is a flexible God. Fortunately, he had not read Calvin's Institutes, or he would know he couldn't do that. But he is flexible. David's glad he's flexible. David goes to the city of Keilah. He hears that the Philistines are going to overrun that city. So him and his men deliver the city. Now they're in the city. Come on, wouldn't you be glad to have your deliverer there? I mean, here was this army and they're going to kill you, and David's army comes to your rescue. Oh, David, man, we'll be your friend for life. Or until Saul gets here. Because word comes to David's ears that Saul is coming down. He thinks, well, these people wouldn't turn me over. I saved their lives. I better go ask God. He goes and asks God. He says, God, is Saul coming down after me? God says, yes, Saul's coming. He sure is. Well, are these guys going to turn me over to him? God says, yep. Yeah, they're going to turn you over to him. So you know what happened, don't you? David stayed right there. Saul came down. They turned him over, and Saul killed him, and David never became king. No, it's not what happened, is it? You know what David did? He left. He didn't know he had to stay. And he left. And he left, and Saul never came down, and the men of Keilah never turned him over. That's flexibility. You know what John Calvin thinks? John Calvin thinks you drive up to a four-way stop, and if you go straight, it's because God from the foundation of the world predestined you to go straight. That's not it. Let me tell you something. If you pull up to a four-way stop, if you go straight, God's got a will for your life. But if you turn left, God's got a will for your life. You turn right, God's got a will for your life. Run the stop sign, the Royal Canadian Police have a will for your life. You can turn around and go backwards, and God has a will for your life. You can get out of the car and buy the house on the corner and stay right there, and God's got a will for your life. Aren't you glad God's flexible? You know why you want to know God's flexible? Because some of you are going to make a mess of your early life. Some of you are going to get into a bad marriage. You are going to start down really the wrong path. And if God is inflexible, you know what he has? He has one railroad track for you, and if you don't get on it, you can never get on it. But this God is flexible. Boy, if there was ever a God that could make lemonade out of lemons, man, he's done it. I mean, I can show you some men who are in the ministry today that they are the offscouring of the world, that their lives were absolutely a mess because they always went contrary, but when they finally got right, you know what this merciful God did? He found a place for them. He found something they could do. Aren't you glad God was flexible in your life? Aren't you glad that when God should have smitten you with the pestilence and eliminated you, maybe somebody prayed for you. Maybe they just said, pardon them, would you? I can't even justify them. Would you just pardon them? And so he is flexible. I tell people that this God is pure. By pure, I simply mean this. Now, I don't care how good you are. I know there's none good. I always say this, there's none good, but there's some nice. And some people are nice. And there are people, they're like, oh, Mr. Rogers, I mean, how could he be bad? And everybody's nice, and everybody's kind, and everybody's dipped in syrup. And let me tell you, the best person you know, or you yourself, at your best, at your cleanest, on your best behavior, when you look really good, ready for the camera. Right in here, there's still something sinister inside every one of us. Inside us, there is a darkness. There is a blackness. Inside of us, there is a hatred for good and a hatred for God. There, you say, and look, it's not big, but it does show up. I found mine one day. And I'm so embarrassed to say this. I'll tell you what happened. I come up here, and this isn't where it happened, but if I come up here and I see one of you guys buys a new car, you know what I say? Man, I'm glad you got a new car. And I see somebody else, church member, buys a new car. I say, well, I'm glad you got a new car. And then I see your pastor buys a new car, and I think, what's he doing getting a new car? I did that. I like cars, and I'm always happy when somebody gets out of something that they have to put a quarter in to get down the street, or the wheels are falling off of it. I'm always glad to see somebody get a new car. And I would see people, I go to churches, and I say, man, I'm glad you got a new car, and I'm glad you got a new car, and I'm glad you got a new car. And I went to this church, and a pastor got a new car, and I said this to myself, what's he doing getting a new car? And I thought, whoa, where'd that come from? I thought, how come I'm so glad church members get new cars, and a preacher I got mad at? You know what I realized? I realized that inside me was that little bit of hatred for God. But I would never be so foolish, like I told you, as to say, I hate you. So we take it out on the closest thing we've got. Guys, I hope you live righteously and good. I hope you are the best you can be. But you are not pure. This God is pure. There is no darkness in him. There is no sin in him. There is nothing sinister in him. There is no dark side. Do you understand? There is no dark side. There is no evil in him. He is absolutely pure. The Bible says that he is holy. You know why? Because he is holy. He is holy. When I think of holiness, I think of a vacuum drawing me up into the pure light of God. That's what I see of holy. Holy is what our God is. Boy, I'll tell you something, guys. You pick up the album for any rock group, holy will not come to your mind. You know what I think? Rock music must make you constipated. Well, really, do you ever look at their faces? I mean, they all look like they're in some kind of pain, and I think I'm guessing what it is. I mean, come on. Did you ever see a rock group where they all went, you know? I thought, they all look like they want to kill you. Well, I think I know what it is. You know, you never looked at those people. I don't care what you say. You never looked at them and said, boy, they look holy. They're not holy. Look, guys, you win all the hockey games you want. Those guys out there in the ice, they're not holy. And I'll watch pro football all day long, but they're not holy. By no means are they holy. They certainly prove that. Do they not? And it is amazing how the world holds some people up as though they were gods, and then we find out, the John Edwardses swish in and swish out, and everybody's Mr. Perfect, and then we find out this guy wasn't too holy. But God is holy. And he is so holy that he can kind of touch us and attribute it and impute it to us. Because you're not holy, but he can impute that holiness to you. And so now he calls me holy. But he only calls me holy because he touched me. That's it. Because there's nothing holy about me. Now I'm going to give you my word. I want you to go to 2 Samuel chapter 22. And get 2 Samuel chapter 22 and get Revelation chapter 5. Now I'm going to rehearse the words I've given you, and then I'm going to give you the word that I think best describes our God in one word. He is merciful, and he is gracious, and he is kind, and he is intelligent. He is righteous, and he is artistic. He is vengeful. Thankfully, he is flexible. He is pure, and he is holy. I think he is all of those, don't you? I just don't think any one of those would be the one I would say that's what he is. If I wanted to find one word to define this God, I find it in 2 Samuel chapter 22. In the 4th verse, he says this: I will call on the Lord who is worthy to be praised. So shall I be saved from mine enemies. There's only 3 times that appears.